The massive alien ship hung in space like a silver needle against the stars. Captain Zixithera stood on the bridge, her 4 eyes focused on the small blue and green planet below. New Haven, the humans called it. Such a simple name for what might be the most important discovery in galactic history. "Are you certain about this, Captain?" Dr. Kelnari asked, her tentacles writhing with nervous energy. The xenobiologist had studied hundreds of species, but humans were different. They had appeared on the galactic stage without warning, spreading across multiple worlds faster than anyone thought possible. "The Council has made their decision," Zixithera replied, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent decades exploring unknown worlds. "We must determine if humans are ready to join the hegemony. If they can pass our tests, they will be granted full membership. If not..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone on the bridge knew what happened to species that failed. The evaluation. Some were quarantined to their home systems, others were marked as too dangerous for contact. A few had simply disappeared. Commander Vextar, the military advisor, stepped forward. His scaled skin shifted from green to yellow, a sign of concern among his people. "Captain, I have reviewed the human files. They are violent, unpredictable. They fight wars over resources, territory, even ideas. They have weapons that could destroy their own planet." "So did the Karathi when we first met them," Zixithera pointed out. "Now they serve as peacekeepers across 3 sectors. Every species has the potential for growth." The ship's communication officer, a being of pure energy contained within a crystal matrix, spoke up. "Incoming transmission from the human colony. They are requesting permission to send a representative aboard." "Grant it," Zixithera ordered, "but maintain full security protocols. We know very little about human biology or psychology." Down on New Haven, Lieutenant Jake Morrison checked his uniform one last time. At 28, he was young for such an important assignment, but he had earned his position through skill and dedication. The Colonial Defense Force had chosen him carefully for this moment. "Remember, Jake," Colonel Williams said, placing a hand on his shoulder, "everything we've worked for depends on this. These aliens could be our ticket to the stars, or they could decide we're too dangerous to exist. Don't give them any reason to think the latter." Jake nodded, though his stomach churned with nerves. He had trained for combat, not diplomacy. But the colony's few trained diplomats were all off-world, leaving him as the best available option. Dr. Amy Carter joined them at the shuttle bay. She was 35, with graying hair and kind eyes that had seen too much suffering in the outer colonies. As the colony's chief biologist, she understood life in ways that others didn't. Her presence would help demonstrate human scientific capability. "I've prepared some basic information about human biology and culture," she said, handing Jake a data pad. "Nothing too detailed, just enough to show we're not savages." The shuttle ride to the alien ship was silent. Jake stared out the window at the massive vessel, trying to imagine what the beings inside looked like. The only images they had received showed shadowy figures in environmental suits. Nobody knew what aliens actually looked like beneath their protective gear. The docking bay was huge, easily large enough to hold a dozen human shuttles. As Jake and Amy stepped out, they found themselves facing 3 very different alien beings. Captain Zixithera was tall and graceful, with pale blue skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on her face. Her movements were fluid, almost dance-like. Dr. Kelnari was shorter and wider, with gray-green skin and 8 tentacles instead of arms and legs. Commander Vextar looked the most intimidating, covered in scales that shifted color as he moved. "Welcome aboard the Stellar Dawn," Zixithera said, her voice coming through a translator device attached to her throat. "I am Captain Zixithera of the Hegemony Science Council. We appreciate your willingness to participate in this evaluation." Jake stepped forward, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. "Thank you for this opportunity, Captain. I'm Lieutenant Jake Morrison, representing the Colonial Defense Force. This is Dr. Amy Carter, our chief biologist." "Excellent," Dr. Kelnari said, her tentacles moving in what might have been excitement. "We have prepared a series of tests to evaluate human capabilities. These are standard procedures. used for all species seeking membership in the hegemony. They were led through corridors filled with technology that Jake couldn't begin to understand. The walls seemed to glow with their own light, and the air itself felt different, charged with energy. The first test chamber was simple enough. Jake and Amy sat at a table across from the three aliens. Between them was a device that projected three-dimensional images in the air. "We will show you various creatures from across the galaxy," Dr. Kelnari explained. "Please tell us your honest reactions. There are no right or wrong answers. We simply wish to understand how humans perceive potential threats." The first image appeared. A creature that looked like a cross between a wolf and a bear, but with 6 legs and teeth that glowed in the dark. Jake felt his heart rate increase, recognizing it as a predator. "That's clearly dangerous," he said. "A pack hunter, probably. Those teeth suggest it feeds on large prey." Amy nodded in agreement. "The muscle structure indicates significant strength. I'd recommend keeping a safe distance." Dr. Kelnari made notes on a device Jake couldn't identify. Commander Vextar's scales shifted to a more relaxed green. These responses seemed to please them. The next image showed something that looked like a giant spider made of crystal. Its body reflected light in beautiful patterns, but its legs ended in razor-sharp points. "Beautiful," Amy breathed. "The crystalline structure is amazing, but those leg spikes would make it incredibly dangerous in close combat." "Agreed," Jake said. "Pretty to look at, but I wouldn't want to meet one in person." More images followed. A snake-like creature with wings. A thing that looked like a living shadow with glowing red eyes. A beast covered in spines that dripped with obvious poison. Each time, Jake and Amy identified the creatures as dangerous and beautiful in their own way, but clearly threats to be avoided. The aliens seemed satisfied with these responses. Jake began to relax, thinking the test was going well. Then Dr. Kelnari projected a new image, and everything changed. The creature was about the size of a house cat, with soft-looking fur and large, round eyes. It had small paws and a long, fluffy tail. By human standards, it was adorable. "Oh my God," Amy whispered, her eyes lighting up. "It's so cute." Jake felt his heart melt at the sight of the tiny creature. "Look at those little paws and those eyes. It's like someone crossed a kitten with a teddy bear." The aliens exchanged worried glances. Dr. Kelnari's tentacles writhed more frantically. "This creature," she said slowly, "is a thermal viper from the death world of Pyrex 9. Its fur contains millions of microscopic needles that inject a paralytic toxin. Those cute paws have retractable claws sharper than surgical instruments. The large eyes can see in 17 different spectrums of light, making it nearly impossible to hide from." Jake and Amy stared at the image, but their expressions didn't change. "I still think it's adorable," Amy said. "Look at how fluffy it is." "I'd love to pet one," Jake added. "I bet they purr when they're happy." Commander Vextar's scales turned bright red, a sign of extreme alarm among his people. Captain Zixthera's 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession, a nervous habit she had developed over years of dealing with dangerous situations. "Perhaps," Dr. Kelnari said carefully, "we should move on to the next phase of testing." But as they prepared to leave the chamber, Jake couldn't help but look back at the image of the thermal viper. It really was the cutest thing he had ever seen. In the corridor outside, the 3 aliens huddled together, speaking in hushed tones. "This is worse than we thought," Commander Vextar said. "They find lethal predators attractive. How did such a species survive long enough to develop space travel?" "I don't know," Captain Zixthera replied, her voice filled with concern. "But we need to understand this behavior before we can make any recommendations to the Council." Dr. Kelnari's tentacles twitched with scientific curiosity mixed with deep worry. "Perhaps we should try a more direct approach. I have a live specimen we could use for testing." The captain nodded grimly. "Do it. We need to know exactly what we're dealing with." As they walked deeper into the ship, none of them noticed Jake and Amy following behind, still talking excitedly about the adorable creatures they had just seen. The real test was about to begin. Dr. Kelnari led the group through a series of heavy doors marked with warning symbols in 17 different alien languages. The corridor beyond was dimmer than the rest of the ship, with thick walls that hummed with contained energy fields. "This is our xenobiology containment area," she explained to Jake and Amy, her tentacles moving in nervous patterns. "We use it to study dangerous specimens from across the galaxy. Everything here is perfectly safe as long as protocols are followed." Commander Vextar walked beside them, his scales shifting through various shades of orange and red. "The creature we are about to show you has never been successfully contained by any other species. We managed it only through the use of advanced energy barriers and constant sedation." Amy looked fascinated rather than frightened. "What kind of creature are we talking about? I'd love to learn about alien biology firsthand." Captain Zixithera exchanged another worried glance with her companions. The humans seemed excited about meeting something that had terrorized 3 different galactic civilizations. They stopped at a reinforced observation chamber. Through the transparent aluminum window, they could see a room filled with energy barriers that sparkled like lightning frozen in air. In the center, on a raised platform, was a containment field glowing soft blue. "Behold," Dr. Kelnari said, dramatically, "the Corvin Razorfang." She pressed a control and the inner containment field dimmed. Inside was a creature about the size of a large dog, but unlike anything found on Earth. Its body was covered in what looked like black velvet fur, but closer inspection revealed each hair was actually a tiny spike. 6 legs ending in massive claws supported a muscular frame. The head was almost feline, with large pointed ears and a mouth that revealed rows of gleaming fangs. The creature's eyes opened, revealing bright yellow orbs that seemed to glow in the dim light. It raised its head and let out a sound that was part hiss, part growl, and completely terrifying to every alien species that had ever heard it. Jake's face lit up like a child seeing puppies for the first time. "Oh, wow," he exclaimed, pressing his face against the window. "Look at those ears, they're so pointed and cute." Amy gasped with delight. "And that fur. It looks so soft and fluffy. I bet it's incredibly warm to the touch." The Razorfang turned toward the sound of their voices, tilting its head in what the aliens had always interpreted as a hunting posture. But to the humans, it looked curious and friendly. "Can we go in and meet it?" Jake asked hopefully. All 3 aliens stepped back in horror. Dr. Kellinari's tentacles writhed so violently that she had to steady herself against the wall. "Absolutely not," Commander Vexistar said, his scales now bright red with alarm. "That creature has killed more sentient beings than any other predator in known space. Its claws can cut through battle armor. Its bite injects 17 different toxins. Its fur is actually composed of microscopic needles that inject paralytic agents." "But look how lonely it seems," Amy said sadly, watching the creature pace in its containment field. "It's probably scared and confused, poor little thing." "Little thing?" Captain Zixithera couldn't hide her disbelief. That creature single-handedly destroyed a hegemony research station. 47 scientists died before we could contain it. Jake studied the Razorfang more closely. "I think it's just misunderstood. Look at its body language. It's not aggressive, it's defensive. Something must have frightened it badly. It's a perfect killing machine evolved on one of the most dangerous worlds in the galaxy." Dr. Kelnari protested. "It doesn't experience fear the way other species do." "Every animal experiences fear," Amy said with the confidence of someone who had studied biology for 20 years. "Even the most dangerous predators are just trying to survive. This one looks stressed. See how its ears keep swiveling? It's listening for threats." The aliens watched in growing amazement as the humans began discussing the Razorfang like it was a troubled pet, rather than a legendary monster. "I wonder what it eats," Jake mused. "It's probably hungry. When was the last time you fed it?" "We provide it with synthetic protein every few days," Dr. Kellinari said weakly. "It doesn't require much food due to its efficient metabolism." "Synthetic protein?" Amy looked horrified. "No wonder it seems depressed. It probably misses real food. What did it eat in the wild?" "Large herbivores mostly," Commander Vextar said. though it has been known to hunt in packs when taking down bigger prey. So it's social, Jake exclaimed. It must be so lonely in there all by itself. Do you have any others of its species? We would never keep more than one, Captain Zixithera said firmly. A single razor fang is dangerous enough. A pack would be impossible to contain. Amy pulled out a small bag from her pocket and extracted what looked like a piece of dried meat. I brought some jerky from the shuttle. Do you think it would like to try some Earth food? The suggestion sent all three aliens into near panic. Dr. Kellinari's tentacles flailed wildly as she tried to form coherent words. You cannot feed it, she finally managed. Any disruption to its routine could trigger aggressive behavior. The containment field is calibrated for its current metabolic state. But Amy was already moving toward a small access port designed for delivering food to the containment area. It's just a little snack. Look how interested it seems. Indeed, the razor fang had stopped pacing and was now focused entirely on Amy. Its nose twitched as it caught the scent of the jerky, and its ears perked forward in what any human would recognize as eager attention. Amy, no, Jake started to say, but it was too late. She had already dropped the piece of jerky through the access port. The razor fang pounced on the food with lightning speed, demonstrating exactly why it was considered so dangerous. But instead of the violent feeding frenzy the aliens expected, it delicately sniffed the jerky, took a small bite, and then made a sound that could only be described as pleased. It likes it, Amy said triumphantly. Look, it's wagging its tail. The aliens looked more closely and realized she was right. The creature's long tail was indeed moving in a rhythmic pattern they had never seen before. Impossible, Dr. Kellinari whispered. Razor fangs don't wag their tails. They use them for balance and as weapons. Maybe they do both, Jake suggested. Just because something can be used as a weapon doesn't mean that's its only purpose. Captain Ben Phillips arrived at that moment, responding to a call from the ship's security team. At 32, he was the head of colony security for New Haven, chosen for his steady nerves and quick thinking. He took one look at the scene and immediately understood what was happening. Oh, you found the alien cat, he said cheerfully, joining Jake and Amy at the window. I heard there was some kind of dangerous creature on board. This little guy doesn't look so scary. The three original aliens stared at him in complete bewilderment. Little guy, Commander Vextar repeated faintly. Yeah, he's adorable, Ben said, studying the razor fang with professional interest. Reminds me of my sister's cat back on Earth, except for the extra legs and the glowing eyes. Those are pretty cool, actually. The razor fang seemed to sense the positive attention. It approached the containment field barrier and sat down, looking directly at the humans with what could only be described as hopeful expression. I think it wants to be pet, Amy observed. Look at how it's positioning itself. That's classic please give me attention behavior. Can we turn off the barrier for just a minute? Ben asked. I bet I could calm it down if it's really stressed. Suggestion sent Dr. Kellinari into near hysteria. Her tentacles writhed so violently that she had to grip the observation rail to stay upright. Turn off the barrier? She gasped. That creature would kill all of us in seconds. I don't think so, Ben said calmly. Look at its posture. It's not aggressive at all. It's curious and maybe a little hopeful. I've seen that look on plenty of animals. Jake nodded in agreement. He's right. This isn't a killing machine. It's just a big predator that's been misunderstood. The razor fang chose that moment to do something that changed everything. It opened its mouth and made a sound that was unmistakably a purr, not the terrifying growl that had frightened countless species, but a deep rumbling purr of contentment. Amy clapped her hands together in delight. It's purring. Oh, it's definitely happy now. Captain Zixithera felt her world shifting beneath her feet. Everything they thought they knew about razor fangs was being challenged by three humans who saw a lonely pet, where everyone else saw a monster. This is impossible, she said to her companions. How can they not see the danger? Maybe, Dr. Kellinari said slowly, her scientific mind beginning to work through the implications. The danger was never what we thought it was. Commander Vextar's scales had shifted to a confused pattern of green and yellow. Are you suggesting that our entire understanding of this species is wrong? Before anyone could answer, Alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The communication officer's voice echoed through the corridors. "Captain, to the bridge immediately. We have multiple ships approaching from various sectors. They're requesting permission to observe the human evaluation." Captain Zixathera realized that word of the humans' unusual behavior was already spreading across the galaxy. Whatever happened next would determine not just humanity's fate, but possibly the future of interspecies relations throughout known space. Captain Zixathera hurried to the bridge, her mind racing with the implications of what she had just witnessed. The communication officer, a being of pure energy contained within a crystal matrix, was glowing brighter than usual with excitement. "Captain, we have incoming transmissions from across the galaxy," the officer reported. "The Crystalline Collective, the Void Runners, the Hegemony Military Council, and at least 12 other major species. They all want to know about the human evaluation." "How did word spread so quickly?" Zixathera asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Someone recorded the interaction with the Razorfang and uploaded it to the Galactic Network," Dr. Kelnari said, her tentacles still trembling from their encounter. "The recording has been viewed over 40 million times in the last hour." On the main screen, various alien faces appeared in a complex grid pattern. Admiral Thekvar of the Hegemony Military Council dominated the center square, his insectoid features twisted with concern. His compound eyes reflected the light from his ship's bridge as he spoke. "Captain Zixathera, please confirm the reports we are receiving. Did humans really attempt to pet a Corvin Razorfang?" "The reports are accurate, Admiral," Zixathera replied carefully. "The humans showed no fear of the creature. In fact, they seemed to find it appealing." A chorus of shocked sounds came from the various alien representatives. The Crystalline Collective's speaker, a being made of living diamond, spoke in mathematical precision. "This behavior does not compute. Razorfangs trigger instinctive fear responses in all known sentient species. The probability of a species finding them attractive is calculated at 0.001%. Yet here we are," Commander Vexistar said, joining the conversation. His scales were still shifting colors with stress. "The humans not only found it cute, they wanted to feed it and provide companionship." Back on New Haven, the news was spreading, just as quickly among the human population. Dr. Lisa Grant, a xenopsychologist who had been studying the first contact protocols, watched the recordings with growing fascination rather than horror. "This is incredible," she said to her research team. "Look at their body language. The humans are responding to the alien creature exactly the way they would to a domestic animal on Earth." Her assistant, a young researcher named Peter Davis, pulled up comparative footage on his tablet. "I've been looking at similar reactions throughout human history. We have records of people trying to domesticate everything from wolves to big cats to bears. This seems to be consistent with human behavioral patterns. But a Razorfang isn't a wolf," Dr. Grant pointed out. "It's literally from another world, with completely different biology and evolutionary history. How can humans have the same reaction to something so alien?" Meanwhile, across the colony, more reports were coming in of unusual human behavior. A group of miners had discovered some kind of crystalline creatures in the deep tunnels and had started leaving food for them. The creatures, which looked like living gemstones with multiple eyes, had apparently started following the miners around like pets. Colonel Matt Stone, the military commander of New Haven, was dealing with similar reports from other human settlements. "Sir, we have 3 more incidents to report," his aide, Lieutenant Nancy Brooks, said as she entered his office. "The farming settlement on the North Continent has apparently domesticated some kind of acid-spitting plant creatures. They're using them to clear weeds from their crops." "And the mining operation on the Southern Continent?" Stone asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. "They've made friends with a pack of creatures they're calling tunnel puppies. According to their reports, the creatures are helping them locate mineral deposits in exchange for food and scratches behind the ears." Stone rubbed his temples, feeling a headache coming on. "Lieutenant, these tunnel puppies wouldn't happen to be the same creatures that the Galactic Survey listed as extremely dangerous, would they?" "The silicon hounds, yes, sir. Apparently they can chew through solid metal with their teeth. Back on the alien ship, the Galactic Conference was becoming more heated by the minute. Representative Kelthera of the Tribunal Worlds was speaking, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to making life-and-death decisions for entire civilizations. "This proves what I have been saying all along," she declared. "Humans are clearly defective. No sane species would find deadly predators attractive. They pose a threat to galactic stability. Perhaps," suggested Commander Vorthak of the Neutral Zone, "we should consider that humans might represent something entirely new. Their behavior, while unusual, does not seem to be motivated by aggression or conquest." "That makes them even more dangerous," Kelthera countered. "At least aggressive species are predictable. Humans seem to operate on completely different principles." Dr. Kellinari decided to share her preliminary findings with the Council. "If I may, I have been studying human behavior patterns. Their reactions suggest they have evolved unique psychological mechanisms for forming bonds with other species." "Bonds?" Admiral Thekvar's voice carried disbelief. "With creatures that could kill them in seconds?" "Exactly," Dr. Kellinari continued. "Humans appear to have developed the ability to look past immediate physical threats and see potential for cooperation. It's unlike anything we've documented in any other species." The discussion was interrupted by an urgent communication from New Haven. Dr. Amy Carter appeared on the screen, looking excited rather than concerned. "Captain Zixthera, I hope I'm not interrupting, but I wanted to share some remarkable developments. We've been studying the behavior patterns of the creatures your people consider dangerous, and we're seeing some fascinating results." "What kind of results?" Zixthera asked, though she was afraid to hear the answer. "Well, the Silicon Hounds are incredibly intelligent. Once they realized our miners weren't trying to hurt them, they started helping locate ore deposits. It's like they understand cooperation as a concept." Several of the alien representatives made sounds of disbelief. The idea that Silicon Hounds could be cooperative was beyond their understanding. "And the acid-spitting plant creatures?" Dr. Carter continued enthusiastically. "They're not actually aggressive at all. They were just defending their territory. Once our farmers showed them respect and offered food, they became incredibly helpful. They can clear invasive species from crops without harming the plants we want to keep." "This is impossible," the Crystalline Collective's representative stated. "These creatures have been classified as hostile for over 3,000 years. Maybe they were just misunderstood," suggested Jake Morrison, who had joined the conversation. "Sometimes what looks like aggression is really just fear or confusion." The galactic representatives fell silent as they considered this possibility. The idea that some of the galaxy's most feared creatures might simply be misunderstood was revolutionary. Dr. Lisa Grant chose that moment to join the conversation from her research facility on New Haven. "If I may add something to this discussion, I believe I understand what's happening here." "Please proceed, Dr. Grant," Captain Zixithera said. "Humans evolved on a planet with an unusual variety of predators and dangerous creatures. Over millions of years, we developed the ability to form cooperative relationships with other species, even ones that could potentially harm us. We call it domestication, but it's really a form of interspecies communication." "You're saying humans can communicate with creatures that other species find impossible to understand?" Commander Vorthak asked. "Not communicate exactly, but we can read their body language, understand their needs, and respond in ways that build trust rather than fear. It's not magic. It's just a different approach to interspecies relations." Admiral Thekvar leaned forward, in his chair. "Dr. Grant, are you suggesting that humans could potentially domesticate any species?" "Not any species," Dr. Grant replied carefully, "but probably a lot more than other species think possible. The key is understanding that most aggressive behavior comes from fear, hunger, or territorial instincts. Address those needs, and you often find that even dangerous creatures can become cooperative." The implications of this statement sent ripples of shock through the Galactic Council. If humans could indeed form cooperative relationships with species that others considered monsters, it would change everything about how the galaxy approached interspecies contact. "We need more data," declared the Crystalline Collective's representative. "This theory must be tested under controlled conditions." "Agreed," said Admiral Tekvar. but we must proceed carefully. If humans are correct, we may need to reevaluate our understanding of hundreds of species. If they are wrong, we could be dealing with a threat unlike anything we've ever faced. Captain Zixthara looked at her crew, then at the humans on the screen. Everything they thought they knew about the universe was being challenged by a species that saw friends where others saw monsters. "Very well," she said finally. "We will conduct additional tests, but I want full security protocols in place. We're dealing with something completely unprecedented." As the Galactic Council ended their emergency session, word continued to spread throughout known space. Some species were terrified by the implications of human behavior. Others were fascinated. The Galactic Council chamber on Hegemony Prime was more crowded than it had been in decades. Representatives from 47 different species had gathered for an emergency session to discuss what the media was calling the human question. The massive dome-shaped building hummed with translation devices working overtime to handle the dozens of different languages being spoken simultaneously. At the center of the chamber, a holographic display showed footage from New Haven. The images were disturbing to most of the assembled aliens. Humans laughing and playing with creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. A particularly shocking clip showed a human child feeding what appeared to be treats to a pack of venomous shadow spiders. Representative Kelthara stood at the speaker's podium, her crystalline body reflecting the chamber's lights in harsh patterns. "Honored delegates, what we are witnessing represents an existential threat to galactic civilization. These humans display a complete inability to recognize danger. How can we trust them with membership in our community?" A chorus of agreement rose from several sections of the chamber. The Hegemony Military Council's representatives were particularly vocal in their support for Kelthara's position. "We have classified these creatures as Class A threats for good reason," declared General Corthan, his scaled face grim with concern. "The shadow spiders alone have wiped out 3 separate colonies, yet humans treat them like harmless pets." Commander Vorthak of the Neutral Zone requested permission to speak. His people were known for their balanced approach to galactic politics, and his words carried significant weight in the chamber. "Perhaps we should consider alternative explanations before we condemn an entire species," he said calmly. "The humans have demonstrated remarkable success in their interactions with these creatures. None of the reported incidents have resulted in human casualties." "That's because they've been lucky," General Corthan replied sharply. "Luck has a way of running out." Dr. Kelnari was given permission to present her research findings to the council. Her tentacles moved nervously as she approached the podium, but her voice was steady as she began her presentation. "Honored delegates, I have spent the past several days studying human behavior patterns. What I have discovered challenges our fundamental understanding of interspecies relations." The chamber fell silent as she activated a series of holographic displays showing brain scans and behavioral analysis charts. Humans possess unique neurological structures that allow them to form emotional bonds with species they have never encountered before. Their brains are literally wired to see potential cooperation partners rather than just threats. "That sounds like a severe evolutionary defect," observed the representative from the Logical Collective, a species that prided itself on pure rational thinking. "Or perhaps," Dr. Kelnari continued, "it represents an evolutionary advantage we have never considered. Humans have successfully domesticated hundreds of species on their home world, many of which were originally dangerous predators." At that moment, the chamber's communication system activated. Dr. Amy Carter appeared on the main display, broadcasting from New Haven. Behind her, several humans could be seen working alongside creatures that most of the council members had nightmares about. "Honored delegates, I hope you don't mind the interruption, but I wanted to provide an update on our research. We've made some remarkable discoveries about the creatures you've classified as dangerous." "Dr. Carter," Representative Kelthara said sternly, "we are in the middle of deciding whether your species should be granted membership in the Galactic Hegemony. This interruption is highly irregular." "I understand, and I apologize," Amy replied, politely. "But I think our findings might be relevant to your decision. May I share what we've learned?" Captain Zixithara, who was observing the proceedings from her ship, signaled her approval. Please proceed, Dr. Carter. Amy gestured to her companions, and the camera pulled back to show the full scope of their operation. Humans were working, side by side with venomous shadow spiders, using their web-spinning abilities to create incredibly strong building materials. Silicon hounds were helping with mining operations, their ability to detect metal ores proving invaluable. Even more shocking, a pack of ice wolves from the frozen world of Fenrir 7 were helping with transportation, pulling sleds loaded with supplies. Each of these species has incredible abilities that could benefit the entire galaxy, Amy explained. The shadow spiders can produce silk stronger than any synthetic material we've ever created. The silicon hounds can locate mineral deposits with perfect accuracy. The ice wolves can survive in temperatures that would kill most life forms. But they're deadly predators, General Corthan protested. They were defending themselves, Jake Morrison said, joining Amy on the transmission. Once we showed them we weren't threats, they became curious about us. It turns out that most aggressive behavior comes from fear or misunderstanding. The chamber erupted in heated discussions as representatives debated among themselves. The idea that centuries of accepted wisdom about dangerous species might be wrong was difficult for many to accept. Dr. Lisa Grant appeared on a secondary screen, broadcasting from her research facility. If I may add some scientific context, we've been studying the behavioral patterns of these creatures. In every case, what we interpreted as unprovoked aggression was actually defensive behavior triggered by perceived threats. Are you saying our military forces were wrong to classify these species as hostile? Admiral Tekvar asked, his compound eyes reflecting his disbelief. I'm saying that your forces approached these creatures as enemies, so they responded as enemies, Dr. Grant explained patiently. When humans approached them as potential friends, they responded very differently. To demonstrate her point, Dr. Grant activated a recording from earlier that day. The footage showed Captain Ben Phillips working with a group of thermal vipers, the same species that had been shown in the original psychological test. The creatures were helping to clear invasive plants from a garden, their ability to detect chemical signatures proving useful for identifying harmful vegetation. This is impossible, declared the Crystalline Collective's representative. Thermal vipers are solitary hunters. They do not engage in cooperative behavior. They do with humans, Ben said cheerfully, joining the conversation. It just took some patience and understanding. Once they realized we weren't trying to hurt them, they became incredibly helpful. The most shocking moment came when one of the thermal vipers approached Ben and rubbed against his leg like an affectionate cat. The creature was clearly seeking attention and comfort from its human companion. A shocked silence fell over the council chamber. Even the most skeptical delegates were forced to confront the evidence before their eyes. Representative Kelthara made one last attempt to maintain her position. Even if these creatures can be controlled temporarily, they remain inherently dangerous. One mistake, one moment of lost concentration, and humans will discover why we fear these species. With respect, Dr. Amy Carter said firmly, you fear them because you never tried to understand them. Every species has the capacity for cooperation if you approach them correctly. But how do we know humans won't turn these creatures into weapons? General Corthan asked, voicing the fear that many in the chamber shared. Because that's not how it works, explained Dr. Lisa Grant. The process of domestication creates emotional bonds between species. Once humans form those bonds, using the creatures as weapons becomes psychologically impossible. We would be harming our friends. Commander Vorthak stood up, his voice carrying new authority. I propose we conduct a formal test of human abilities. If they can successfully establish peaceful relations with a species we consider truly impossible to approach, then we must reconsider our entire understanding of interspecies contact. What species did you have in mind? Captain Zixathera asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. The Void Stalkers of Kepler 438c, Vorthak replied grimly. If humans can make friends with creatures that exist partially outside normal spacetime, then they truly represent something unprecedented in galactic history. The chamber fell silent again. Void Stalkers were considered so dangerous that the entire Kepler 438 system had been quarantined for over 2 centuries. No one had ever survived a direct encounter with them. That's practically a death sentence, Dr. Kelnari protested. Or, Jake Morrison said quietly, it's an opportunity to prove that there's no such thing as a monster. Just misunderstood creatures waiting for someone to treat them with kindness. The vote was close, but eventually the council agreed to the test. If humans could establish peaceful contact with void stalkers, they would be granted full membership in the galactic hegemony and given a special role as interspecies mediators. If they failed, humanity would be classified as too dangerous for galactic contact. As the council session ended, Captain Zixithera couldn't help but wonder if they were about to witness either the greatest breakthrough in galactic history or the most tragic mistake ever made. The test was scheduled for the following week, and the entire galaxy would be watching to see if humans really could befriend the ultimate nightmare creatures of space. Dr. Amy Carter smiled as she looked at her human colleagues. The rescue ship Harmony dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 438 system, its hull gleaming against the backdrop of distant stars. Captain Rick Torres stood on the bridge, studying the quarantine warnings that filled every screen. For over 200 years, no ship had entered this system and returned to tell about it. "Are you sure about this, Captain?" asked Sergeant Katie Walsh, checking her equipment one final time. At 29, she was one of the youngest people ever to volunteer for such a dangerous mission, but her calm demeanor under pressure made her ideal for first contact situations. As sure as anyone can be when dealing with creatures that exist partially outside normal reality, Rick replied with a grim smile. But if we're going to prove that humans can make friends with anything, this is our chance. Dr. Amy Carter finished her preparations at the science station, her hands steady despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. The diplomatic ship that crashed 3 days ago had 17 survivors when they sent their last transmission. If the Void Stalkers haven't hurt them yet, maybe there's hope for peaceful contact. Jake Morrison joined them on the bridge, having volunteered to lead the ground team despite Captain Zixithera's concerns about his safety. The alien survivors are from 3 different species, all of whom consider Void Stalkers to be absolute nightmares. If we can show that humans see them differently, it might change everything. Throughout the galaxy, billions of beings watched the live transmissions from the Harmony. The Galactic Council had agreed to broadcast the mission, partly to document human capabilities and partly to provide evidence if the mission went horribly wrong. On Hegemony Prime, Representative Kelthara watched with barely concealed satisfaction. "This will prove once and for all that humans are dangerously delusional," she told her aide. "No one has ever survived direct contact with Void Stalkers." In contrast, Dr. Kelnari monitored the mission from her laboratory, her tentacles twitching with nervous excitement. She had spent days studying every piece of data about Void Stalkers, and her findings suggested that human psychology might indeed be uniquely suited for contact with these creatures. The Harmony approached the moon where the diplomatic ship had crashed. The surface was a nightmare landscape of twisted rock formations and areas where reality seemed to bend and shift. According to sensor readings, this was where the Void Stalkers made their home, existing simultaneously in normal space and in dimensions that alien science could barely detect. "Landing coordinates confirmed," announced the ship's pilot, Lieutenant Mark Adams. "The crashed ship is about 2 kilometers from our landing site. The survivors' life signs are weak but stable." "Any sign of the Void Stalkers?" Rick asked. "Negative, sir. But that doesn't mean much. They can appear anywhere without warning." The landing team consisted of Rick, Katie, Amy, and Jake, along with 2 other volunteers, Dr. Carl Murphy, a xenobiologist eager to study the creatures, and Corporal Nancy Hill, a communications specialist who might be needed to coordinate with the survivors. They descended through the moon's thin atmosphere in a heavily shielded shuttle, watching as the landscape below grew more disturbing. With each passing moment, areas of solid rock would suddenly become transparent, revealing glimpses of other dimensions beyond. Shadows moved independently of the objects that cast them. "I can see why people find this place terrifying," Amy observed as they landed. "It's like reality doesn't work properly here." "Maybe that's exactly why the Void Stalkers chose it," Jake suggested. If you exist in multiple dimensions, normal space probably feels limiting. They made their way across the alien landscape, following their instruments toward the crashed diplomatic vessel. The ship was badly damaged, its hull twisted in ways that suggested it had encountered forces beyond normal physics. "Hello," Katie called out as they approached. "This is a rescue team from the human colonial forces. Can anyone hear us?" A weak response came from inside the wreckage. The team quickly located the survivors. 5 beings from the Crystalline Collective, 3 members of the Logical Assembly, and 9 representatives from various other species. All of them looked terrified and exhausted. "You must leave immediately," gasped one of the crystalline beings. "The Void Stalkers will return soon. They have been watching us, studying us. We think they are deciding whether to kill us or something worse." "How long have you been here?" Dr. Murphy asked, scanning the survivors for injuries. 3 days, replied a member of the Logical Assembly. "They appear at random intervals, sometimes alone, sometimes in groups. They make no sound, show no emotion. They are like living nightmares." As if summoned by their words, the air around them began to shimmer. Reality bent and twisted, and suddenly they were no longer alone. 3 Void Stalkers materialized out of nothing, their forms shifting between dimensions. The creatures were unlike anything in normal space. They appeared to be made of living shadow and starlight, their bodies constantly shifting between solid and ethereal states. They had no fixed shape, sometimes appearing almost humanoid, other times resembling geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. The alien survivors recoiled in terror, pressing themselves against the wreckage of their ship. But the humans had a very different reaction. "Oh, wow," Amy whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. "They're beautiful. Look at how they move through different dimensions." Jake stepped forward slowly, his hands visible and empty. "Hello there," he said softly, as if greeting a shy animal. "We're not here to hurt anyone. We just want to help our friends get home safely." The Void Stalkers paused, their shifting forms becoming slightly more stable. One of them approached Jake, its body cycling through various patterns of light and shadow. "I think it's curious about us," Katie observed, watching the creature's behavior with professional interest. "Look at how it's positioning itself. It's being cautious but not aggressive." Dr. Murphy pulled out his scanner, but Amy quickly stopped. No instruments yet. Let them get comfortable with us first." The lead Void Stalker extended what might have been an appendage toward Jake. When it touched his hand, Jake felt a strange sensation, as if his consciousness was briefly expanded to perceive multiple dimensions simultaneously. "It's trying to communicate," he said, his voice filled with amazement. "It's showing me how it sees the universe. There are so many layers to reality that we can't normally perceive." More Void Stalkers began to appear, drawn by curiosity about these strange beings who showed no fear. Soon the humans were surrounded by the shifting, ethereal creatures, but instead of panic, they felt wonder. "They're lonely," Amy realized suddenly. "They exist in so many dimensions that they can barely relate to creatures like us who only exist in normal space. But they want to communicate, to connect with other intelligent beings." Captain Torres, monitoring from the shuttle, watched in amazement as the creatures began to take more stable forms around the humans. For the first time in recorded history, Void Stalkers were maintaining consistent shapes for more than a few seconds. "It's working," he radioed back to the Harmony. "The creatures are responding positively to human contact." The breakthrough came when one of the smaller Void Stalkers, apparently a juvenile, approached Corporal Hill and began cycling through different shapes rapidly. It took her a moment to realize what was happening. "I think it's playing," she said, with delight. "It's showing off different forms to get our attention." The young Void Stalker settled into a shape that resembled a cross between a cat and a butterfly. Its form stabilized in normal space for the first time in its existence. Nancy reached out carefully and touched its ethereal surface, which felt like touching warm starlight. The effect on the other Void Stalkers was immediate. They began taking more solid forms, apparently fascinated by the humans' ability to perceive and interact with them in normal dimensions. Within an hour, The humans had established a basic communication system with the creatures. The Void Stalkers were indeed highly intelligent, but their existence across multiple dimensions had made them almost impossible for normal beings to understand or relate to. They've been trying to communicate with other species for centuries, Jake explained, to the galaxy via their transmissions, but most beings run away in terror before any real contact can be established. The rescue operation proceeded smoothly, with the Void Stalkers actually helping to repair the damaged diplomatic ship. The creatures could manipulate matter across dimensions, making repairs that would have been impossible with conventional technology. As they prepared to leave, 3 young Void Stalkers approached the humans with what could only be described as pleading gestures. They had learned to enjoy existing primarily in normal space, and wanted to accompany the humans to learn more about their perspective on reality. "Can we take them with us?" Amy asked Captain Torres. "They're genuinely interested in peaceful contact with other species." The question was relayed to the Galactic Council, where the debate was brief but intense. Finally, Commander Vorthak spoke for the majority. "If humans can successfully establish peaceful relations with Void Stalkers, then they have proven beyond any doubt that their approach to interspecies contact is valid. Grant them full membership and give them the authority to mediate contact with species we have deemed impossible to approach."